Welcome, ladies. Welcome back to Family Still Matters. Today, we're going to be talking about the 5 signs that God is protecting you from a bad relationship. I know oftentimes we'll say, I prayed about it, but God wasn't saying anything. And oftentimes, we haven't really learned how to tune in to the voice of God or even to acknowledge or to be able to tune in to our own internal voice. God is speaking to us oftentimes, and we just ignore it or haven't yet learned how to discern it being the voice of God. So the first sign is that unexplainable discomfort or unease that you feel when you're on the date with the person. Not the first time, because sometimes we are going to always have those little jitters on that first date. But let's say you've been dating this person, but every time you get ready to plan to go somewhere or do something together, you always have this sense of unease. And you often will just sum it up as anxiety. It's not in anxiety. That's the divine guidance protecting you from compromising your values and getting in a relationship that is not going to be good for you. The second sign that God is protecting you from a bad relationship is when timing is off. You and this person got in this relationship, and it seems like there are always obstacles, doors closing, I mean, just illogical conflicts about little small irrelevant things that you have discussed before but never were an issue. But everything's in the timing is off. I'm going to share my story just briefly. I was dating, and this young man and I were just clicking. Everything was clicking. Everything was just so perfect. And we got into a little small dispute about something just so insignificant as me on my way back home, having to travel over an hour to drive back home in the evening. We had a small dispute about me picking up a carry out for him and taking it back to him in the apartment and then getting back on the road. Something that insignificant turned into a major dispute. And we ended up like not talking for a couple of days. Then we didn't talk for a couple of weeks. And the next thing I know that a couple of days and weeks turned into a month. Well, when I had reconcile myself to the fact that this is not the right person. He's not right for me. I'm not right for him because if he can't see my viewpoint, I he should have been able to understand how I felt. I'm a woman getting ready to drive over an hour back to my home on the highway. You think it's okay for you to be comfortable, but it's not even that issue, but it was that little thing that God began to reveal to me. That's strategically the way God was protecting me. At first, I couldn't see it. When he came back after the little dispute, I want to give him a second chance, and I did, and got back in the relationship. But then there were other obstacles. I could have avoided wasting all of that time in that relationship if I had of just known and understood that God was revealing to me with that little dispute and the timing being off in the relationship. If I had just tuned in and said, okay, I prayed about this And I prayed about this relationship before I entered it. If I would have just stopped and said, God, what are you trying to tell me? I mean, about this situation? Why are we arguing over something so petty? What is this? Then I would have understood that God was revealing to me that was God's strategic way of protecting me. And now when I look back, years back, I recognize that God was trying to protect me in that relationship. He was trying to keep me from wasting years and years of time and months in a relationship that ended up not actually being the best that God had for me. The number 3 sign that God is trying to protect you from a bad relationship is the powerful truth that when you have a deep inner knowing, we often say is intuition. But sometimes when you meet a person, you know how sometimes in a date when you're young, you've already saw yourself, you done sped up in your mind. We as women, we've already forecast a relationship. If we like the guy, we done already seen him in proposing to us and getting married and all of that. But there's some guys when you date them in that relationship, you can't see far in it. It's something deep inside of you that just lets you know this one isn't right. This one isn't right. But you just go against because you can't logically explain why you're feeling this way. You go on and take a chance. But understand, God is protecting you often when there is a manifested deeper inner knowing about that person, even though you can't explain it. Step back and ask God, what is He saying to you when you start to feel that way? The fourth sign that God is trying to protect you from a bad relationship is when you feel behind in dating. You feel like, oh, I got to catch up. I'm too old. Often, people would tell you, that you're hitting a wall. You need, you're waiting. You're being too you you're behind the time. When you feel like you're behind in dating, question and look deeper into that, because I have found often God is protecting your relationship timeline. Because if you are feeling behind, you have to often ask yourself, who's telling me I'm behind? Who's setting the standard? Who's setting the timeline? Ask God. When you start feeling like you're behind, say, God, am I behind? Or is this you trying to protect my relationship timeline by preventing me from rushing into a relationship that would pull me away from your calling? Often when you hear these voices saying you're behind, most times you're where you're supposed to be. Don't listen to those voices, or at least test those voices. The fifth and final sign that God is trying to protect you from a bad relationship. When you have loved ones and friends in your faith community that you know are wise, that you've taken their advice and it has always been on point. But all of a sudden, when they start expressing concern about that person you're dating, you draw back. And all of a sudden now you're questioning, well, maybe they're jealous, or maybe they don't understand all of the circumstances. You need to question that. That's a sign that God is trying to protect you from the pain and agony of having to untangle yourself from a relationship that isn't His best for you. So I hope that these 5 signs that I've shared with you will help you when you are dating to know right off without having to waste a whole lot of time. These 5 signs God is protecting you from a bad relationship, you need to listen to that unexplainable unease that you feel. You need to watch and question when the timing is off, or you see obstacles or conflicts over small things that are insignificant. When there is a deep inner knowing, when you're with that person, that you can't really see a future, you can't visualize yourself with that person in the future. The third thing is when there's a voice telling you're behind, telling you need to catch up. You know, God is trying to, God is protecting your relationship timeline. And the fifth and final thing I want that could be is just listen to the people in your community, your loved ones and friends in your faith community that express concern. And you know these individuals are wise, they give you sound advice, you know that they love you and they do not want to see you harmed. So I hope and pray today that you will take to heart these five signs. And I pray that God will protect you as a woman of faith, seeking to know God's will for your life in relationships and dating. I don't want to see any of you in a bad relationship from this time forward. So I pray that God will give you the wisdom and the discernment to know and how to hear his voice and to read the signs that he's given you. May God richly bless you. And I pray that I have said something that has enriched you, has empowered you, and will help you in the future in your dating. May God richly bless you.